Welcome, IT changemakers, to the Dex Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello, changemakers. We're in the 200s, Tim. We are a something episode.
We're in our third century.
In our third century of podcasts. And, look, we had a few people point out to me, Tim, smart Alex that our listeners are, but we're actually on when we did our 200th episode, it was our 203rd episode.
Wow, somebody's counting other than us.
We're so sorry, everybody. But so we're 204, 205. Who's counting? Who's counting? Quite so. But we've got an excellent guest to kick off our third century, as you say, Tim. Today we're joined by Robb Wilson, CEO and co-founder of OneReach.ai, which is an award-winning platform pioneering enterprise-grade conversational AI and automation. But we know Robb quite well for his sort of, his writing and his thought leadership around what one phrase Robb uses, human-centric AI design. The co-author of a fascinating book called The Age of Invisible Machines, which as much as anything has the most wonderful and appropriate title for one of the sort of dominant themes, I feel, of the show at the moment. Welcome on board, Robb Wilson. Great to have you.
Yeah, thanks. 203 episodes. I'm feeling old.
You feeling old just looking at us?
Just listening to how long you guys have been doing this.
Can you imagine, Robb? Could you, maybe the best place to start would be if you could define that for us and maybe explain the broader significance of something which is obviously so pivotal to the age that we live in, which is the conversational interface. What do you embedding that connected to the agentic runtime concept?
Yeah, I'm super guilty all the time of hating that we anthropomorphize this stuff and then doing it to help make things more understandable to people. So I'm going to do it again. If you think of a runtime for agents, a lot of people can relate to the idea that if they need a place to work, just like people need a place to work, they need tools to work with, just like we need a desktop and tools to work with. And that they're as good as the tools they have and the knowledge that they're supplied within that workplace, right? So that's kind of what it is. But then, of course, it completely breaks that paradigm when you realize that these things are self-replicating, that they're self-learning, that they work 24/7, and that they can, never forget anything, read things instantaneously. So then you start creating all of the nuances, which aren't so nuanced, about how different they are from people. And you end up with a runtime that's not quite like our desktop.
Intriguing. And the conversational interface, it's significant.
Yes.
Features so much in your work, and we're gonna, I think, dive into it. And Tim's got a few questions that sort of drill into it in a bit more detail. But I was just interested, almost in passing, Robb, given the growing significance of that conversational interface. Where does it leave the humble screen? I mean, we have been a screen-dominated species now for a decade, right? We can't even imagine life without screens, let alone we can't imagine technology without screens, let alone life without screens. Are we approaching a life without screens? Is the definition or role of the screen just going to fundamentally change? Are we entering the post-screen world, Robb?
I don't know. I'm not like a futurist, but I did grow up with Marshall McLuhan. I played in his front yard, and my mom meditated with his wife.
So, you're kidding me, bro.
No. Yeah.
So we're moving from a hot medium to a cold medium to a cool medium. What are we doing here?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people don't know this about him because he kind of kept this a secret because he always claimed that he didn't have anything against media, that he was neutral, but it wasn't really true if you knew the backstory. And the backstory is he would sit in his living room listening to his wife talking on the telephone to her sister or other people and like completely tuned in to what was going on in some other town with people she didn't know for hours. And it irritated him so bad. Like he's like, what is going on? What is happening? Like, where is she right now? She's not here with me. She's somewhere else. where is she? I'm going to spend a bunch of time understanding this from an irritation standpoint, not not because he was on the phone or wanted to use the phone, but because he couldn't understand why she did and why she wanted to. And that is sort of an unknown story. And I think
I love it. I love it. That's a
and our screens are just an extension. Like, where was she? Why wasn't she there? Why was it more interesting to be in that other place? And how convenient was it that she didn't have to leave her house to get there? Right?
Yeah.
And I don't think we're ever gonna not transport ourselves to other places in that convenient way until we can like actually do in Star Trek where we like move around instantaneously. And I don't think that having more senses to being somewhere else is like we're gonna reduce that. Screens will become more high fidelity potentially, but I think the screen is a super convenient way for our eyes and our ears to go somewhere else really fast. And so I think we'll always have screens of different sizes, just more of them. I think people talk about it going away, but there's just going to be different screens everywhere in different sizes, I think. I mean, I have a hard time seeing them go away, but I don't see them as phones. I think that's a funny thing that we call our computer a phone. I thought computers were going to take over, but it turns out phones.
The humble phone, that ties it all up, doesn't it? From Marshall McLuhan listening to his wife on the phone to where we are now. That's pretty incredible. I love that. And I'm going to, is there anything else we can flesh out here, Rob? Because I think you going on to be a sort of agentic conversational interface expert and innovator that you are, and having that childhood in playing in Marshall McLuhan's backyard feels incredibly appropriate. Any other influence or touch point there that we could pass by on our way to Tim's questions?
I don't know. I think I find that his writing like is still being understood today. It's fascinating. I think one thing that I'll just give you another point on him that people don't know.
Cool.
Well, I'll give you two. One is one media is the massage, right? Was actually a misspelling by accident, and then he went along with it.
It's a misspelling by.
He's like,
Say it again.
So the media is the massage, which is how it's spelled. Like it was message, right? Obviously, but there was a misspelling, and instead of correcting it, he just went along with it.
Yeah,
it's like massage. I like that. So that wasn't like intentional. And the other thing that I think's super interesting, is if we look at when he wrote a book, right? His publisher was always like, no one's going to read this. And he's like, why? And he said, well, because when you write textbooks, like there was kind of a rule, and there still is, you can only make 10% of that textbook new ideas, and the rest have to be regurgitating old ideas, or it's too much for people. And so this was like just kind of a rule of textbooks is 10% new ideas, 90% old ideas, because people can't handle more than 10%. And I think we see now with the adoption of AI that it can do so much more, and that we're holding it back. And it's because we're doing this like iterating 10% different from our old software just to keep it familiar. And as you kind of go, as we talk more today, we'll see like this software is really 100% different than the old software. But when we see how it's being implemented in the companies that are coming out and the solutions, each one is like 10% different. We put a button in here to summarize the conversation. Why do we even have an interface? So there's two more points for you.
Love it.
So Rob, let's bring it to life a little bit. We'll start with a question around kind of a hypothetical example. Give us an illustration, and it can be real or a hypothetical, of an organization where these agent runtime environments could actually be profoundly transformational. Apply it to kind of daily life in an example or illustration for us.
Okay. So the first thing is to just like realize that you kind of go through a few things, right? I think you have to kind of go through the evolution of machines and code for a second, just to kind of mark where we are, right? So in the early days for software developers, and I was one of these, you sat there looking at a screen with a blank cursor just blinking, and you're like, okay, write your application, right? From nothing. Everything you had to create was from nothing. Every component, everything. And then that changed, and all of a sudden there were all these pre-written components. There were APIs and NPM packages, and we went from like writing software to orchestrating software. Even though we still call it writing software, when you look at most applications, it's not writing software anymore, it's orchestrating software. We're like, okay, now we're orchestrating software. And that is done in advance, predicting like, oh, if this, then that, we'll call this, we'll call that. And then we get to like an LLM, which can write orchestration code in real time. So now we don't need to orchestrate software anymore, because software can orchestrate itself. And you're like, great, it can even write itself. So LLMs can write their own prompts. LLMs can tune their own prompts. LLMs can evaluate their own outputs and decide if they're appropriate or not. And if they're not, they can go and fix it, and they can rewrite the code. So what you have now is a self-adaptive system. You have a system that is adaptive, almost like economics. You know, when you look at a city or most economic environments, they're like super adaptive. You know, a coffee shop goes out of business, another coffee shop comes in. There's no like centralized orchestrator. The mayor is not deciding and master planning out the city. You have this adaptive system. Now imagine that all of our software is like that. Each agent constantly evolving as you change your policies, I think of it as the GPS. Like, it says turn right, you turn left. It says recalculating. It's rewriting itself. So now you're like a gardener. You're like planting seeds and creating an ecosystem, and you're never going back. You're not fixing bugs. You're not deploying software. It's just all of these little tiny systems with objectives adapting to everything that you're doing or want to do. Hence, like, the invisible machines. Like, these things will just work in the background, trying to get you a better deal on your health insurance, moving your balances around from one introductory offer to another, applying for jobs at every company that can offer you more money than the one you're in, blah 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 blah, getting at a parking tickets. Like, we're just going to have little armies of these systems out there advocating for us in the world, against other little systems advocating. So that's just a crazy idea and this is all possible right now. This isn't like, oh, in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, to hear that the art of the possible is real, and the different scenarios that are coming to life. It definitely, it's on the verge, if not feelings in many ways like science fiction. And that's here, right? So apply it to some real world scenarios. IT operations, for example, can tend to be very stagnant over time. They're doing the same thing over and over again. They're just keeping the lights on. A lot of people would relate it to just being on a treadmill, and it's not a very satisfying kind of a role. In your view, what role should IT be playing to help drive and enable real organizational transformation, to get off that treadmill? Does IT play a role here, or is it more of a business function telling IT what they need for outcomes? What's who's driving the ship?
Yeah, that's so interesting. There's a great book out there called Prediction Machines. And it talks about the transformation of like coal-powered steam engines to electric motors. And I think it really helps when you look at strategies and how companies were evolved to split it into two. It's going to be two things. This what they call point solution change, which was replacing the coal motor with a big electric motor, but still all the belts that radiated through the factory are still there, and all the machines circling the big motor in the middle. And then systemic change, where every machine gets a small motor, they put it in a line and they call it assembly line, right? So let's look at it through that. IT has their 10% changes that they're going to keep doing, right? And they're going to, all of these systems can easily handle 10% better on everything. You just name the use case. It can monitor logs. It can monitor systems. It can, when a bug happens in a piece of software, it can go repair the bug, even recode the bug on the fly for the user. You don't have to open a ticket, send it to IT go to, like, it can just solve itself. If an API call is malformed, it can reform it, right? So it's hard to say because we're holding it back. The question is, what will people implement at their pace, right? That's comfortable to them, which is really hard for me to predict. And systemic changes, why do we have an IT department? Like, we used to have a computer department in companies, and if you worked on a computer, you were in the computer department, and you were probably a woman, by the way, in 1970. Now, if you work on a computer, you're not in the computer department, you're just an employee. So is there an IT department? Is there a development department 5 years from now? I don't think so. I think everyone's going to be in it, or no one, whatever your definition of it is. So I find that if you just look at any project in IT, you just pick anything, you can apply an agentic approach to it and improve what it is. So the question is, where do you begin? And to me, it's begin at the point of high pain points. But there is a point I'd like to make, which is, I think, super, super important at this moment. The adoption of AI is not happening at the company level. It's happening at the individuals.
Right.
It's just, people just aren't, that's where the money is. That's where all the money's being made. That's who's adopting at light speed. Employees are like, oh, this company isn't using AI. Yes, they are. Every employee, if they can save time, they're using it. Just because it wasn't sanctioned, it's like an illusion. Like, oh, we don't use AI. Like, you're wrong. Look around us. And if you factor that in, you realize, like, oh, wait, what happens when that AI goes outbound, when they unleash that onto companies to apply for jobs, to, get better deals, to, in bad cases, add mold to a candy bar and send an email and try to get a free box of candy, right? What happens when teenagers and everybody else starts putting these things outbound? This idea that IT can move at 10% and call centers can be like, oh, let's get 10% better. They're going to be in panic buying. They're going to be like, we cannot no longer handle this. We didn't expect the exponential curve of adoption on the other side. So I think we're in this moment where, yeah, look at all your current projects, look at your pain points, and incrementally change it at your leisure until a year from now or 18 months, and you'll be in panic to get systems in place. And that's what I'm worried about, actually. I'm worried about the panic buying.
Right.
While people are taking their time learning this stuff, now you got a bunch of people who don't know what they're doing, implementing in a panicked way.
We've talked several times on the show about the evolution of shadow IT to shadow AI, people doing things at the grassroots level that are unbeknownst to IT. Not only are they doing it for their own benefit, their own reduction of time, but I would argue more directly, a reduction of their own effort. I think they're looking at it as an easy button. Why should I put in the effort if I can just go have AI do it? And that shadow AI, I think, that giving it a term like that almost minimizes the impact and the risk of that happening in an enterprise. So let's look at the impact in an enterprise, right? So as my background is IT, engineering and engineering compute. I ran a desktop engineering team for many years. The first time we saw an orchestration tool it was awe-inspiring. It was, oh my God, look at what we're going to be able to do. The possibilities seemed endless. And that notion of 10% really rings true to me because we implemented that and we saw so many possibilities and so many new things that we could do over a period of a very short period of time. It actually died because we didn't know who owned it. We couldn't handle the inbound workload asking for new things. And we said, you know what? There's too much that we can do with it. We need to shut it down. So talk a bit about the implication for IT's traditional service models when we introduce so much change. And now that, managing it with agents, does that help manage that volume of change? Or are the agents themselves introducing too much change to be able to manage? How do we see the nature of IT support evolving over time to be able to accommodate it?
Yeah, it's so hard. Again, we go back to Marshall's book that we're still digesting it. Yeah, he's dead, and like, so are we gonna 10 years from now still be adopting what's possible today? Like, are we gonna slow this down, or is this different? Is it that all of us as individuals and personally we're adopting so fast, we're doing the greater than 10%?
Right.
Is that going to push companies to go faster? Very, very hard for me to predict that. Shadow IT, you're right. It's like, I mean, it sounds minimal when it's like completely transformational, and it's basically saying, people are automating their jobs and getting second jobs. you know, they're already doing that. And then if they're not, they're thinking about it and they're going, because the company hasn't quite like realized they've automated their job yet. Why? Because they think they're in control. They think, oh, well, I haven't given them the tools. Of course they haven't. Like what? um, is IT in that place where, like, is their head in the sand? Like, do they think they're still in control and that people are just using the tools that they're providing? And are they going to just keep providing tools that people aren't going to use because they're too slow to provide them the latest tools? I really don't know, right? I think there's definitely an issue right now where you have more restrictions on companies providing tools and what companies can do to employees and to consumers than consumers have back to companies, meaning companies can't robocall people, but people can robocall companies. And so you have this like lopsided scenario where companies have more liability for adopting the tools than people do. And then now we're going to have companies that need tools to react to all the people adopting them. And so will IT just get overwhelmed? Or does this get democratized? The other thing I've seen folks talking about is this idea that if IT doesn't move fast, if it doesn't adopt, at the pace of consumers and employees, that some companies will, and that we'll see this like massive roll up where companies that do adopt will buy the other ones that don't because they'll have the leverage to do so. So we're not going to like necessarily see them all go out of business, but it'll just be financially feasible for them to go purchase
Consolidation.
and roll them up because they're like, well, we don't. It's not like we'll take your 10-person accounting team and turn it into 5 and add it to our accounting team. It's our accounting team is fully automated, so we'll just get rid of all 10, and that gives us money to purchase you.
It's an interesting paradox to think about a company introducing AI agents to their employees, a top-down model, and telling people, we need you to automate your job so we don't need you anymore. It would be pandemonium, but it feels like employees are going to do it organically. They're going to automate their job.
That's what's crazy.
They're not needed anymore.
They're all like sitting there going, my company's going to automate me out of a job. We're like, no, you are doing it.
Right.
Like, they're not.
What does that mean for IT support? You talked about this notion of IT just organically being consumed into the business. We don't need those support channels anymore. We still, and I think because it's reality in most places, still talk about a classic tier one support, tier two, support, tier three escalation, because there are people and skill sets and knowledge that are needed in that tier system. What happens to that? Do the teams automate their way out of that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's kind of weird to think about. So Omar Santos, he kind of leads that's like coalition of AI security, and he's from Cisco. It's like the center of security. He's going to all these giant data centers and consulting with Cisco. And we just had a conversation recently, and on my podcast, and he's connected to a good friend of mine. And I think he would tell you, like, security, for example, there's no security department. Everyone's in the security department. These silos break down, and if you're going to call IT, what are you going to tell it in the future of self-creating software that's been generated on the fly? Like, your interface was generated right there in real time. You're using it, it disappears. It's just part of a transcript. It was never a CI/CD pipeline. The bug was fixed when it happened. So are you just going to call and say, hey, my chatbot called me a bully? I don't like that. And IT's like, oh, well, I'll have a talk with that chatbot of yours. Like, is it just a place to go, vent the personalities that, who made these things,
There's got to be a casual somewhere, though, right? If we let technology just manage, maintain, fix, deploy, upgrade, change, where do the humans come into play?
It's a great question. It's a funny thing. Like, where do the humans come to play? It's like your dog. Let's say you go get 3 dogs, right? And they're running around here. It's like, where does the human come in? I don't know. Like, these guys are playing with each other. Are they gonna? They're there for you, Like, the dogs have no reason to be in the house and to do what they do if not for you, right? So I think we think of human in the loop a little bit off. The point of humans in the workplace, and the reason, like, one of the economic reasons we pay bosses more money than we pay employees, is we need to give them more to lose, so that if they make mistakes or are negligent, that losing their job is meaningful to them and that it's damaging to them. So and then the more responsibility you have, the more money we give you, so the more you have to lose, so the more seriously you take those decisions. This paradigm remains. People have to take responsibility for these systems, and they have to have something to lose when these systems are either negligently ignored, like their objectives. So think of all of their objectives have to be signed off, almost like you're a CEO sitting there and you're getting this paperwork, and this one wants to lower our electricity bill by doing X, Y, and Z. Okay, yes, I approve this. I approve this. Oh, you approve this? You're fired. If a car runs into somebody, it can't be the car's fault, right? So with all of these machines, some human has to take responsibility. It's not about them being needed to get the job done. Like, that's just an old paradigm. They're needed to take responsibility for the objectives of these machines, which means they have to pay attention. That's why you hear, like, guys like Elon Musk say, like, it'll be one guy and 12 robots, and they'll be watching over those robots to take responsibility for what those robots are doing, because without that, we don't have a system. Our entire system breaks down. So robots don't have anything to lose when they make mistakes. There has to be a human. So we see this with Amazon Q, as they've been, like, working on migrating mainframe workloads over to Amazon services. This has been a huge success project, and the guy the principal designer on that was a guy who used to work with me. And you look at what it used to be like, trying to recode that stuff in Amazon service is really open source, right? And you look at what that looks like now, and it's like this event log. You wake up in the morning and there's all these yes, oh yes, okay, no, oh yes, okay, no, and I almost think of like the Obama thing. Like, are we all gonna have like gray and blue suits because we're gonna have to make so many decisions all day long from our systems, going like, do you want me to do this? Do you want me to do that? And you have to pay attention and read that you want to like diminish the number of choices you have to make.
Decision making, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a whole socioeconomic show that we could have. We don't have time for it today, right? But the revenue of a company will no longer be flowing into the pockets of employees. It's flowing into the pockets of the tech bros who own the AI platforms, right? They're digital employees now. So what's the impact there for society? But that's a tangent that we're not going to go on. For employees, especially in IT, how do you future-proof your career, right? Talk about the skills, the habits, the mindsets that will help them maybe stay relevant as intelligent automation reshapes their work. How do they, I guess to put it plainly, how do you stay employed in IT?
Yeah. I think one of the challenges with IT is that your boss and the apparatus above you thinks they're in control of the adoption of AI, and so they're slowing it down, and they're slowing you down, right? And now you're like falling behind, you know. So it's not putting your learning and your career in the hands of the people that you work for, but like, you're gonna have to lean into this stuff on your own. Don't wait for your boss to, to approve use of tools. You're gonna have to go tinker. You're gonna have to play with this stuff on your own, because you may find that the rest of the company is more proficient at technology than you are before you know it.
So interesting, Rob. When you have sometimes you podcast yourself, right? Sometimes you got questions and they get answered in the course of the conversation. You just know that the questions look a little bit redundant by the time you get to it. But one thing I'd like to pick up on is a couple of things actually. One is you talk about like the illusoriness of control in this era, or you allude to it. The impossibility of control, whether it's on an organizational level or an individual level or even a collective level. That would seem to be a big transition for us, society. And what kind of a transition do you see that as fundamentally, like an existential, psychological one? Because there's not a pragmatic approach you could take, is there?
I had a conversation with the former ambassador for the U.S. In Sweden. He was the ambassador in Sweden for the U.S. and then the U.K. Barzum, and he talks a lot about decentralization and decentralized orgs, and he points out that there are companies like Visa and that are decentralized. He talks about how cities and towns are decentralized in general. You don't have the mayor making all of these decisions. So decentralization isn't necessarily this existential new idea. It's just not common in companies. We still run companies like dictatorships, and they're very centralized. And what he would say is, you either decentralize or die. And that means you're going to have to defer personal responsibility onto your employees. You're going to have to let them make decisions. You're going to have to trust them, just like we trust in cities people to design their own coffee shops. And so you've got to kind of rethink your organization to run more like a city than running it like Iraq used to be run.
And conversely, as individuals, rather than necessarily entrepreneurs and business owners, the onus is, or let's say as employees, that's the same ethos can be taken on board, but in a very different way, right? Like you have to consider yourself a fully decentralized unit of economic production for your own life, effectively, and any expectation of the traditional security offered by the corporation, offered by your employer, that's the that's fast becoming an illusion you would do well
Yes.
on an individual level, correct?
Yeah, I think if there's something existential to a lot of people, it's that they grew up with an apparatus, parents that took care of them. Then they went to college, but really, they were given rooms and structure. And then from college, they went to a corporation that doles out just enough work, not too much, not too little, pays them. And now they have to actually be adults, and take responsibility. They can't just sit there and wait, right, for parenting from their boss. And that is existential for a lot of people. They're institutionalized. They can go through life. They can go to retirement, and like they go through life being parented.
Well, we've structured society with the idea of that autonomy is a rare quality, right? Like it's the captains of the industry, it's the entrepreneur, like and everybody else, the rest of us, we don't have to exercise that characteristic per se. We are the supporting cast, if you will.
Yeah, it might be the one downside, or one of the few downsides of middle class. A lot of people that are poor, like they don't have that structure and apparatus. That's why we see a lot of them become entrepreneurs, right? So I think it's just your class definitely can contribute to how institutionalized you are, and probably that's the class that gets disrupted the most psychologically by feeling like, wait a sec, everything's just been provided to me. What is this where I have to take ownership?
The final thing, I thought we could tie it back to Marshall McLuhan, maybe actually, because actually what you're describing, that I think McLuhan talks about the movement from the literate society to the oral society, from the directional to the instantaneous, from a hierarchical to the integrated. This almost sounds like the complete realization of that. And I think I remember one image from his writing, which was about the factory line resembling the line of text.
Yeah, letters are right. Yeah.
So and that as the fundamental basis, not only of forms of work, but of the career itself, right? But the progressive career, you enter it, you move through successive stages, left to right, and you go, where
the linear versus the circular.
the linear versus the circular, right?
Yeah, the same with software. Like it was linear and now it's circular. Like it fixes itself. Like what do I do in a circular world? We're used to assembly line. It's the cradle to grave. It starts here, it ends there. Like it never ends. What are you talking about? Yeah. I think as designers, right, especially designing things, that's where things need to go to become more, to create less waste in the world. Right? If we designed more circular things, that would be better. And it is, circular thinking is definitely, it's a little more difficult and challenging, but it's kind of where we're all headed. When I think of Marshall McLuhan's global village, as you're talking about, right? The whole we're all connected. There's something I wish I could go back. I wish I could talk to him, because I have this this new idea. It's not a new idea, but I wanted to blend an idea. I think, I'm always fascinated by society. Somewhere in time, we were anatomically the same. We're generally the same size brains, the same size fingers, 10 fingers, 10 toes. But then something happens, way, 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 way down the line here, where we just suddenly start advancing. Egypt, and whoa, what? We didn't change. What happened, right? There's this puzzle as to what the heck happened then to turn us from hunter gatherers to where we are right now with software. Our lives are so different with where we haven't changed. And I think most will just tell you that it was just the concentration of people, the ability for people to reach a certain populace where ideas could easily travel, and we can build upon old ideas, right? And so it's almost like earshot, like, oh, I can tell you, I learned something, I tell you that, then you learn something new and you tell the next. And so maybe it was just like every time we got close to the density that would perpetuate this, like we get a virus or some natural disaster, a comet hits, and we're like, oh man. But finally we hit this density, and we could now talk and build on ideas and iterate on ideas fast enough. And maybe LLMs, like I was thinking about the tribe in New Zealand that took a language, their language that they were losing, trained an LLM on it, and now their language will be preserved forever. Like the elders were dying, and now and maybe knowledge now has taken this leap where we can build upon it at an exponential rate. So his whole idea of global village, it probably ties to this idea that now that physical concentration no longer needs to be physical because we have digital connectivity. So now, even if there were 1 million people all spread out, it would, from a knowledge standpoint, it would be as if they're all in the same location. And now what does LLMs do to that when not only are we not going to lose old ideas that were popular and we knew about, but we're also not going to lose old ideas that haven't become popular yet. The ones that weren't popular.
And look at one last thing. Just it reminded me of our conversation with Pedro last week, Tim, about he mentioned AI doesn't have skin in the game. And it was a phrase I thought was very nice, but Rob really fleshed out when he spoke about taking on the human responsibility, being a kind of professional exigency, if you will, or something that will sustain the idea of professional in the future. But absolute pleasure to have you on, Rob. Really enjoyed the conversation. And anything you'd like to put out before we say goodbye in terms of where people can reach you or read your material, etc.?
Not really. I think I think the there's two things that are coming that people should pay attention to. One I've been working on for 10 years, and that's the agent runtime. I think it's building agents. We show third graders building agents. They're easy to do. But giving them a place to work, a safe place, I think that's a super important thing folks should pay a lot of close attention to. And then I think also understanding like what's next after agents. I think if you look at NVIDIA and you look at these other folks, simulation, I think it's really important to factor that in to understand like these things become more reliable when they can simulate what they do before they do them. And I think a lot of people are missing that AI is going to do X, Y, and Z and make mistakes. And like, no, actually, once they're super intelligent, they'll be super good at predicting and simulating what they'll do before they do them, which is they'll be better at it than we are. So I think simulation is a fascinating next step that we're all going to take here, and it's a good one to factor in.
Cool, love it, Rob. Great pleasure. All the best. Thanks. Well, man.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Rob.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how NextThink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nextthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.